We were trying to do guerrilla marketing ideas and stuff back then. We used to go into Selfridges and just leave our t-shirts on the rack as though people could buy it. So hopefully people would pick it up and go to the tills and try and buy it. And then someone in Selfridges would be like, what's this 304 clothing? So we're trying everything.
This month's sponsor is Triple Whale. Supercharge your ad campaigns with their revolutionary analytics platform, because better data means better campaigns. If you're running any type of paid media, then you need to be using Triple Whale. Find out more at trytriplewhale.com. Hello and welcome back to the DTC Deep Dive. My name is Fraser, and today we're joined by an icon in the e-commerce apparel industry, David Powell from 304 Clothing. He's an English lad, so it's good to have a fellow Englishman on the podcast, and he's going to be telling us his story of how he started 304 Clothing after it being going for 10 years this year, the ups, the downs, and where he's heading next. We're also going to be touching on retail and wholesale and why it's important for brands to expand with wholesale and retail. A really interesting one. Excuse the sweat on my forehead and the fan noise in the background. It's boiling hot in the UK. Anyway, less about that. Let's get on with the podcast. Welcome, David, to the D2C Deep Dive. How are you doing, mate? It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to get you on here for ages, but schedules have clashed. You've been all over the place. I've been all over the place, but we're doing it. It's finally here. It's finally happening.
It is happening, mate. I'm very, very grateful to be invited and happy to get stuck into it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You're going to have to excuse the fact that we have an aircon unit on in here because it is boiling in the UK at the moment. You're in your car, so I don't even, do you have your aircon on, windows open, or are you just
Windows open, aircon's on, but it's a lot cooler than the warehouse at the moment. Our studio is like a greenhouse, so yeah, I'm glad to be sat in the car and not in there.
Man, it is horrific. Currently, 22 degrees, which might not seem like much to people, but I feel like when it's hot in the UK, it feels way hotter than like anywhere else in the world. I don't know why this is a thing. Actually, we discovered recently we have a longer relationship than we even realized, because maybe like 4 years ago we made you some gifts for your Instagram, like way back. And then we got back in touch on Twitter. You've done the prints for all of our staff, like merchandise, I guess you'd call it. So we've got some hoodies, some t-shirts, some long sleeve stuff. You've sent me some stuff which I'm repping. I'm repping the 304. I've got a hoodie which I was wearing as well. Yeah, happy days. Yeah, definitely not a hoodie today. So for people that don't know who you are, have never heard of 304, give us your story. Let's talk about it, and then we'll go in depth after that.
Okay, cool. So Whistle Stop One is, I'm the co-founder. We started the brand 10 years ago. I studied architecture at University of Liverpool. And the sort of the idea behind 304 and why it started was just, we had like a core group of friends that we all, I don't know if you've been to university, but like it's a very it's a little bit entrepreneurial, that you work in crazy hours. You're in a real group of people that are sort of doing the same thing. And after university, we were just like, we kind of wanted to carry it on, the 9 to 5 of working in an architectural studio, and my two business partners at the time working as a physio and in a pharmaceutical company. So they weren't that exciting, if I'm honest with you. We just wanted to do something outside of the 9 to 5 hours, and we just stumbled across sort of clothing, really. It was never pre-thought out or a premedicated business idea or brand idea. We stumbled across it through Tumblr. Tumblr was probably the social media at the time. It was quite big.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember the Tumblr days.
Yeah. So I got a little bit obsessed with Tumblr. Saw a vest that I really liked. Couldn't find it anywhere. It's not like you're scanning an item in a shop these days and it tells you where to buy it from. It was like, where on earth can I get that vest? So we just made it. And then 10 years fast forward, here we are, sat in my car doing a podcast with you, and the brand's turning 10 years old in August. So yeah, that's a quick 10 years.
Yeah, and I mean, you've had a pretty crazy 10 years, and we'll speak about that a little bit further, from like your warehouse burning down and you basically losing everything and have to kind of start over again. You're stocked in some massive retailers, Asda, ASOS. Like, you know, you're no longer a small fish in the pond, which is making clothes for you and your mate. So like, what would you say has been the biggest change for you from going from that core group of mates making clothing for yourself basically and a few friends to now having, you know, a clothing line which is worn by, you know, thousands of people.
The initial sort of like quickening up of the brand was influencer marketing back like 6-7 years ago. And when it went from just us getting messages from friends being like, oh, can you make me the one-off vest or the vest for the weekend? And we were getting like 10, 15, 20 orders from, say, Australia, and we had no idea who they were.
Mm-hmm.
It was that moment where we were like, hold on a second, we're actually starting to get more sales now away from family and friends. And we sort of, the light bulb moment sort of came. We're like, okay, well, maybe this could be something. We didn't think it'd be a business or a brand, because at the time when we started, bedroom brands and stuff weren't really a trodden path. There was no one else that we could look at and go, okay, we'll say this brand's done that, let's follow their footsteps. Because 10 years ago, Instagram wasn't even around. We were really early to it, so we had to sort of learn on the job. But yeah, I'd say that was the initial turning point, was when that switch happened from friends weren't buying it as much, which at the beginning it was a great support for us. Our friends were purchasing, family and stuff. And then I'd say phase 2 would be maybe 6 years into the business, when it was self-sufficient enough for myself and Sean to be full-time in the business. But we were like, well, where could we take this to? Where could it go to next? Could we look at getting staff in, scaling it, trying to approach these retailers that in the past, when we'd had conversations, we weren't really set up to do it. Like, I think we had a conversation with Selfridges in our second year, and I was a bit of a rabbit in the headlights. So I didn't really know. And some of the questions they were asking, I didn't know what they were asking me. So it was a bit of a steep learning curve in that sense. But yeah, I'd say there's the two moments in the business that really changed it.
I have a co-founder as well, and I think the moment where myself and my co-founder Nick could finally take a full-time wage, and we had a contract that was in place that would pay us, that was like the biggest point. And we were like, hold on, we can actually do this as a job, and it's no longer just us messing about in our bedroom.
Yeah, it's a little bit security, isn't there?
Yeah, it's definitely the coolest moment of running your own business, where you can actually afford to pay yourself. And then as soon as you can start to pay other people, it's insane. So you mentioned a little bit then about influencer marketing. Influencer marketing has changed massively from when you started doing it. And because it's 10 years since you've been going, you've been posting some of like the old photos of celebs wearing your clothes and stuff. Let's talk about that, like early days of influencer marketing, what it was like for you, like how that impacted your business, because that must have been massive. Because I feel like you must have been one of the first brands to have celebs wearing your stuff, and then people buying it because of that.
Yeah, for sure. It was never pre-thought out. I think I heard Ben Francis say the same thing, that it didn't have a tag of influencer marketing. It didn't have a tag of gifted collaborations or anything like that. We were selling clothes, and at the time people were trying to grow their Instagram pages, again, not knowing what they could be. But we had people from One Direction, X Factor, some of the biggest influencers around now were wearing it back then when they were relatively small. But even when they were small, they were getting crazy ROI for us for just sending out a free vest. And yeah, the landscape's changed massively now, but it still works. But I think now you have to put a lot more time and effort and sort of thought into it. Back then, it was as simple as someone who was relatively aligned with what we were selling. Say we had a vest that we used to be quite slogan based. We had one that said strictly house music on it. Simple, just a slogan. We sent it to some DJs in Australia. They wore it at a festival behind the DJ decks. Next day we woke up, we had like 35 sales, which again, it's not hundreds, but back then we were only getting 1 or 2 sales a day. So we were like, what on earth has just gone on here? So it was great. It really kicked us forward. It sort of gave us the kick up the bum to say, hold on, you're actually making clothes here that people quite like, but we didn't understand how to get it in front of people. So again, Facebook ads weren't around. Instagram ads weren't around. TikTok wasn't a thing. So it was really the only way we could get our clothes in front of people, other than just organically posting to social media or gifting. We used to go to festivals and hand clothes out to people and then try and get a picture of them wearing it, so it looked like someone had purchased it even though they hadn't and stuff. So like we were trying to do guerrilla marketing ideas and stuff back then, and we used to go into Selfridges and just leave our t-shirts on the rack as though people could buy it. So hopefully people would pick it up and go to the tills and try and buy it. And then someone in Selfridges would be like, what's this 304 clothing. So we're trying everything, but influencer marketing was definitely the one that sort of we saw good
Yeah,
traction.
How are you going about finding the people to send it to? Because now, there's talent agencies, there's influencer agencies, all this stuff. You mentioned like members of One Direction were wearing your clothes. Were you just searching their agent and then getting their address and sending them stuff?
Yeah, some people like that. It was finding their agents, or some stylists used to reach out to us quite organically. Whether like there's a couple of, we were based in Manchester, so a few stylists that lived locally started hearing of the brand, and they were like, "Oh, we could get this on X Factor." And then once it was in X Factor, some of the contestants were seeing it, and at the time that's One Direction. It was the dancers, and then it was Made in Chelsea stars. It was all really organic, to be honest with you. We did a lot of outreach. Don't get me wrong, through just messages on Instagram, messages on Twitter, or whatever else it was. But at the beginning, a lot of people were approaching the brand directly.
And how's that changed now in terms of how do you still do influencer marketing? Is it still a major part of your marketing stack? Like, how's that changed compared to how it used to be?
We probably don't do it as aggressively as we used to on the sort of the paid side of things. We do have like an ambassador scheme where we gift to what you call micro influencers, where we try and sort of feed the clothes in at the grassroots, so to speak, rather than going in at the really expensive paid ambassadors, because we just found that we stopped liking sending out, say, one product to one person that would be seen by more people, and we actually prefer sending it out to, say, 100 people, and then 100 people organically saying, "I like this brand, I like the clothes," and letting the word of mouth spread rather than using the social media side of things and trying to feed downwards. So we changed our approach a little bit. I think it probably aligned with when we sort of stopped selling ourselves as a bit of a lad brand. During the middle of the brand's history, we did focus on being in JD Sports, Foot Asylum, and was putting a real emphasis on the menswear. And I think we sort of not lost our way, but we sort of said, this isn't really what the brand started about. It was about being a unisex brand, family, fun, not that sort of sportswear lad brand JD. So when we did that, we were like, well, we need to start getting this clothes back out to real life influencers, who are people who wear our clothes day in, day out. If the influencers aren't buying our clothes, then maybe they're not a true supporter of the brand in the first place.
What do you think of the influencer marketing industry as a whole? Because like, I've seen a bit of a change, especially in the past 12 months, to how it used to be so, aggressive. Everyone was doing it. It was the only thing that people used to speak about. Whereas now I feel like, especially with the rise of like user-generated videos, where people are less bothered about, who's making it and more about the actual content which is coming out of it. Do you think influencer marketing as an industry is taking a bit of a dip that it won't recover from?
Possibly, yeah. Possibly. I think, like you said, the user-generated content is really good for brands and businesses in terms of showcasing the product, which I think maybe the users are probably more interested in now, seeing actually the functionality or the positives of the product, rather than just seeing said Love Island star wearing it in front of their staircase or in front of a car, which maybe 2-3 years ago, which it did work for 304. It's worked for tons of other brands. I'm sure it still does for some brands, but I think the customer base isn't as bothered by it. It's not as affected by it anymore. And they would rather see, like you said, the user-generated content, the real life stuff, and actually seeing the product in its real environment. Obviously, clothing's quite an easy one in that sense, but I saw you post a picture the other day about the baby cuts and stuff, and the difference in conversion for a picture of it in real life versus a studio, and the difference in conversion. And it's true in all brands and all businesses. That's what people want to see really now. I think influencer marketing in general, like obviously Gymshark are the kings at it really, but there's a long-term partnerships, which I think if you're going to do it, you've got to do it that way really.
This week's edition of the DTC Deep Dive is brought to you by Motion. Are you still using spreadsheets to track your creative ad reporting? Well, if you are, you should try Motion instead. Motion bridges the gap with your creative team through visual and digestive reports so they can make engaging content that actually converts. With one click, you can share insights with your team and add members to your workspace so they can easily deep dive into reports on their own. Motion makes it super easy to identify key drivers for performance and helps eliminate the guesswork in the creative production process. Join the 500 plus teams like Huel, The Ridge, and Foxwell Digital in using Motion to improve their ad results. Say goodbye to creative fatigue and try Motion for yourself with a 14-day free trial at motionapp.com. Let's talk about one of the major events, I guess, that happened in the 10 years that you've been running 304 is when your warehouse burnt down. And I mean, for anyone, I mean, if my office burned down like that, like, I don't know what I'd do. Like, I mean, we have all of our camera gear here, we have our computers, everything. For you, it was your stock. It was the thing that you're making money from, right? Like, what was that like? Like, tell us that story. That was wild.
We had just made a huge business decision to do our first hire. So we were going from 2 founders, very like hustle stage of the business, to going, okay, right, we are now going to pay first member of staff, pension, tax, everything like that. Big moment in the brand. We actually went away on holiday. The first member of staff is my best friend, so we were on holiday together just before he started. And I got a phone call from my business partner back in the UK and said, look, sit down. I think you're going to need to sit down for this one. Our warehouse is burnt down. So there was a leak in the ceiling. It was a 3PL business, warehouse. It was absolutely huge. It had other brands in there as well. Mm-hmm. And the water got into the lights and the whole thing went up in flames. And we lost all our stock. Yeah. So it was about 250, 300 grand's worth of stuff. We had nothing left other than some samples in an office in Manchester. And I think I sat down and was like, right, I'm going to fly home straight away. We need to do something. Mm-hmm. I sat down and thought, right, I need to fly back to the UK and start doing something to fix this issue. Mm-hmm. But my friends actually sat me down and said, look, you're probably going to be a lot more good for the business if you just take a day, think about things, come up with a plan, and then attack it, rather than going back in your emotional state of like, what on earth are we going to do here?
Yeah.
So yeah, taking that 24 hours was key. And then we had a conversation with John, who was the staff member who we were hiring, Sean, and we just said, look, we can either call it a day now and just leave it. There'd be no shame in doing that, because this is a massive event that would probably finish most businesses. Or we give it a massive push and say, right, this is a bit of a reset for the business, as for the brand, and let's give it a go. So we actually did a rebrand. We went from 304 hashtag to 304. We had a new website built. We spoke to all our suppliers and said, look, we're not going to be able to afford to pay for any of this stock that's currently on the way, or any of the stock that we've just purchased. Will you support us? Will you get behind our new vision of like resetting the brand? And to be honest with you, some of them said yeah. So I think that goes back to like sort of myself and Sean and the relationships we built with our suppliers, that they supported the vision and they built into it as well, and sort of thought, okay, these guys are serious now. And yeah, we said we're going to give it a go, and we just got stuck in straight away. We got the website live within 3 days again. We had print on demand going in the UK within 2 days. So all the customers who were like expecting X order, we contacted them and said, look, this is the situation, as honest as possible. Well, your stock's burnt down. We can offer you this replacement instead. Do you want it? And I'd probably say like 90% of the customers said, send it me whenever you can. Don't worry about it. We're supporting 304. And that was another bit of a moment where we're like, oh, our customers are really behind us here. We've built a community that they weren't just buying a new t-shirt, they were supporting 304, the business and the brand. And from that point onwards, we've not really looked back. It's been tough. Don't get me wrong, because obviously the financial implications of that happening has been really hard to navigate. But the brand is a lot stronger, the community is a lot stronger on the back of it. So people have asked, would you change it? And I say now, no, I wouldn't. I'd probably do it all over again, because I personally and the brand are a lot stronger because of it.
Yeah, amazing. I think a lot of the time these massive, problems or, things like that happen in our business definitely, change things. I can think of multiple occasions in Fraggle where we've had things go completely belly up, and it's normally ended up for the better, and it's almost like something is kind of guiding you in that direction. So in 2019, you launched on ASOS, which for any of our, I'm not sure, ASOS in the US?
They do ship in the US, yeah.
They do ship to the US.
Nordstrom, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, that's like the main place that I get most of my clothing from. It's like the easiest way to buy clothes online. And you launched on ASOS. I'd say it's the biggest clothing retailer. Why did you choose to partner up with ASOS and not just focus direct on D2C through the 304 website?
Couple of areas to the question. We sell men's, women's, and juniors, so there's quite a lot of scope in the brand, and at times it's quite hard to get all those messages across to all the target markets, essentially. So we were thinking, well, we're either going to have to keep ramping up our spend on ads to try and approach men's, women's, juniors, families, because we sell so many SKUs, or we can partner up with certain retailers who will essentially, indirectly they compete with your sales because they're both online, but you would reach a wider audience, which in turn, obviously when you go on a stockist like ASOS or whoever else, you don't put your full SKU list on there. So you're sort of hoping that it goes into the cost of acquisition, that someone will buy an item off ASOS, really like it, then be like, oh, this brand's really nice. Let's check their website out, go onto the website and see how you've presented your website, the story of the brand, the staff, everything that goes behind it, and sort of invests in the brand and then becomes a fan, and then will eventually purchase directly from your website. So that was sort of our tactic with it. And we've partnered with quite a few retailers over the years in different countries. And they've always been successful for us. We always see the direct traffic coming to our website from them areas or from them countries. So it's something that we're always going to have in our business plan, to partner up with different retailers as we go forward. Yeah.
Do you think it's a major thing that other kind of online fashion retailers should look at? I'm sure there's plenty of people that want to get into this industry. Maybe they already have a fashion brand which they're thinking about, maybe taking it to a stockist. Do you think that should definitely be part of everyone's play?
Yes and no. So it depends if they align with your brand, your values and stuff. There's no point in trying to stick your brand in a store that you're not comfortable yourself. So say like, I don't know, I always go back to like say Represent. They're not going to put their brand in Foot Asylum because their price points don't align. Their target market might be slightly different. So as long as you can confidently say, right, I feel like 304 would fit, or whatever brand it is, with this stockist, and you're prepared to work with them and they're prepared to work with you, then yeah, I don't see why not. On the flip side, there's brands like your Gymsharks that are local to me, Manier Devoir lounge underwear, that they're solely direct to consumer. And that's the way they like it, because they have more control over the data, more control over the information on their customers, which is valuable. But it really depends on the brand, depends on the owners, depends on the strategy. We quite like it because we get to reach a wider audience than we would if we just stay direct to consumer. But we've gone through periods where we haven't done wholesale for a couple of years at a time. So I would definitely say try it.
Yeah, and one of the other retailers that you were in, which actually took me by surprise, to be honest, when I saw you in there, is Asda, which for US listeners is Walmart, right? I think. Yeah. So you're in Asda, which I'd say is like one of the biggest supermarkets in the UK and in the US as well. Like, what was the decision to go into Asda? Because you mentioned there about making sure that they align with who you are as a brand and making sure that you can both work together. What was the reason for going in Asda?
Asda was an opportunity came up sort of during COVID, when obviously the retail high street was really struggling in terms of people weren't allowed to go there, and supermarkets were future proof that customers could always go to a supermarket. So that opportunity presented itself, that we were like, well, we can still allow our customers to see our clothing in real life, even if an event like this was to happen again, which hopefully it doesn't. But then also Asda, I think George itself is the biggest online retailer in the UK in terms of the customer base it actually gets, especially on women's wear.
Wow.
So we sell 65-70% menswear, and our women's wear is drastically less than the menswear. So we saw it as an opportunity again to try and reach a wider audience on the women's wear side of things, and to continue pushing the fact that we are a unisex brand. So a lot of our stuff is perfect for a lad or a girl to wear. So we just saw it as an opportunity again to reach more people who are in our sort of target audience. Young families shop at Asda, young families shop on 304. So it sort of just made sense at the time. So yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, what's your split at the moment between D2C and retail or wholesale?
It's probably 70% online, 30% wholesale, I'd say at the moment. And it's usually around there. I think this year, obviously, now COVID sort of nearly finished, a lot more stockists are now starting to have more confidence in buying stock. So we're having quite a good year on wholesale this year. So I'm not too sure what that number's going to finish at, but that's probably about that.
You are seeing this move at the moment from people, a few years ago, fast fashion, Pretty Little Thing, that, and still are some of the biggest retailers going. And there's this idea of kind of throwaway fashion, right? You're buying a shirt for £3, whatever, and then you're very quickly moving on to the next thing. Do you think now that people are starting to move away from that, do you think it will affect the fashion industry and the way that people are buying clothes? Like, because, you're one of those retailers that isn't like that. You're buying a really good piece of clothing which should last a while, whereas you have other people on the other end of the spectrum. We're already seeing, some brands, going out of business because the industry is moving. Do you think that's going to carry on? How do you think people's shopping habits are going to change?
I think so, yeah. I think the fast fashion is going to probably struggle. Not that maybe the big brands, because they can pivot and change their approach, but I think any small to medium sort of businesses that just focus on that throwaway fashion may start to see sales dip. We made quite a couple of conscious decisions over the last few years to try and make sure we stay away from it as much as possible. Is we had a custom builder built on the website, so we wanted to try and educate our customers to have more involvement in their actual purchase, so they can design their own item on our website. So we want our customers to think, well, when they've invested their own time and decision making into it, that they're actually going to keep that item for 3, 4, 5 times longer than just buying the 3 or 4 hoodie that I've designed or someone else has. So that was one of our key sort of, I'd say not tactic, but our decisions to try and keep our customers invested in buying long term rather than short term. Your customer base needs to be as educated as possible on it. So that is the brand's responsibility to tell people about making sure they're making the right decision in their purchases. And I think we're okay placed at the moment, but even businesses like ours will start filtering across even further, that there's regulations coming in place that we all need to hit within certain times to make sure that we're doing everything we can to try and be as sustainable and environmentally friendly as possible.
I love the idea of the personalized clothing that you do. Yeah. I really wanted to chat about that. Do you think that's like, I mean, I don't know any other clothing brand that does that, because that's like print on demand. Like that's exactly what that is, right? And you mentioned that you started to do that after the warehouse. So, I mean, do you see many people coming on customizing their own piece of clothing? And do you, when they make things, do you go, oh, that's pretty good, I'm going to have that and I'm going to give that to everyone else?
Yeah. It has happened, to be fair. We launched a custom builder, I think it was 2 years ago now, and some of the designs that come through are crazy, and we think, wow, this is really good. So we send them a letter and say, like, would you be happy for us to shoot this on our next shoot and launch it and stuff? And some of the customers come back and say, like, they're buzzing with it. So again, it sort of integrates the customer into the brand further, and I love it. I find myself making myself a new t-shirt or a new hoodie from 304 every time we do a new collection drop. And then we stick them on social media, and people go, oh my, can I buy that item? And I'm like, well, it's probably got about £100 worth of logos on it, so I don't think you'd want to maybe spend that. But it's a real good sort of message for the customers and for the brands. And yeah, it's a great thing. We pretty much 90% print on demand in our bulk orders as well, so we have zero wastage. If an order comes through up until 3 o'clock, we print it there and then on that day, and we get shipped that day. In previous years, pre-fire, we would be ordering stock like any company would, but we weren't big enough to be selling through all the sizes and all the SKUs and stuff. So what we do now is we buy our own blank clothing. The only other brand that I know that for sure do this on a pretty big scale is Champion. They produce blank clothing, and then they finish it. I don't know if you've ever been to a Champion store in New York or London and stuff.
No.
They're amazing. You go in there, you pick your hoodie, your t-shirt and stuff, and then they have these like custom labs. You go in there and you pick all your logos, and they just do it for you right in front of you.
Wow.
And that's how the brand started 10 years ago, essentially, on a very small scale, where we'd buy vests from H&M and then print the letters on for our friends. So now 10 years on, being able to do it on a bigger scale is brilliant. And it's good that we have zero wastage. Anything that's ever printed wrong or defected, we list it on our Depop site, on our Vinted site, or we donate it to charity to make sure that it's not just going to waste.
That's amazing. I had no idea that's how you worked. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So do you, I mean, that must make you way more nimble in terms of reacting to things, because you don't hold all this stock, right? You aren't like, oh, this line didn't sell very well. Oh shit, we've got 40K's worth of stock sitting there. So like, do you find that launching collections, you're launching them constantly, I imagine, right?
Yeah, so we're launching at the moment. Every week we're putting new graphics on, and it goes back to sort of just trying to keep yourself interested in the brand and the business. And like you said, without launching too much stuff that it becomes a little bit throwaway, we are launching quite regularly, but it's always on our core blocks, our core colors.
Mm-hmm.
And our customers really like it. It keeps the message in front of the customers and stuff. So yeah, we're really nimble in that sense, and we have very little wasted stock, which I love saying it, because like you said, some business and some brands will be sat on thousands and thousands of units that they'll either have to sell at a very, very reduced price at a loss, or even just get rid of it, which is a shame, really.
So what would you say has been your biggest learning so far in the 10 years of you running 304? What's the one thing which you will take through into maybe your or other businesses which you end up running?
I'd probably say that, like you said yourself in your business, that when something goes wrong, you just have to not get too emotional about it and think this is the end. Sit down, take your time, take a breather, come up with a solution. And then eventually that problem actually becomes a positive and part of your ammunition to go forward, because once you solve a problem, if it happens again, you're set for it. If you get another smaller problem in the future, it's not as big as what you've done in the past. And I think that mental strength, you need it in business, you need it in brand building. I sort of compare it to running, that if you start running, you always get to a point where you think you're absolutely done and dusted, you can't carry on. And if you do just get in your own head and say, no, I can push past this for 2-3 minutes, it becomes easy again. I think that's similar to business, that you get that runner's block on a daily basis, to be honest with you. But if you push through it, it becomes easy again. You think, okay, that problem wasn't the end of the world. And I think that at the beginning, when we first started the business and brand, everything that went wrong, we took things personally. We thought, this is the end. We're the only person going through these problems. But anyone that owns a business, anyone that's runs a brand, or even just life in general, everyone has problems that you have to navigate through. Just try and get that mental strength to do it.
Yeah. And what's next for yourself? What's next for 304? Do you have any plans on the horizon?
I would say that the immediate plan is, it's our 10th birthday in August, so we've got quite a lot of things planned in terms of showcasing previous stuff. We're bringing customers into the office to try and meet the brand, and doing a lot of content around the past 10 years, really, which is really exciting. We're going to start 1st of August. So if anyone follows 304 Clothing, you'll see over that month of August pretty much the 10-year history, and then see what we've got planned for the next 10 years.
If people want to follow along with your journey, with 304's journey, what's the best place for people to do that?
Any of our social medias, really. So the brand's 304 Clothing on everything, pretty much: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and then me personally, my social medias, DMP at DMP304. So you'll find me on Instagram, Twitter, and things like that as well.
Amazing. I'd love to speak to you for longer, but we've reached our time limit. So thank you so much, David. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. I'm excited for all the Fraggle merchandise you're going to be making for myself and the people on Twitter who keep on asking for it. So thank you so much, mate. It's been a real pleasure having you. I wish you all the best with the 10-year anniversary. I'm excited to buy some more 3 or 4 myself. And I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And that's it for the D2C Deep Dive this week. Thank you ever so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this one, then make sure that you rate it 5 stars on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen or watch the podcast. We're on Spotify video now, which means that you can watch us and listen to us all at the same time. Very fancy. You can follow me on Twitter @SourFraser. And, well, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.